Hi, I'm Eric Blume, editor and publisher of Electric Perspectives magazine at the Edison Electric Institute. I'm here in San Francisco at EEI's annual convention. I have the pleasure of speaking with Eliott Roseman, who is a vice president at ICF International.
Right.
And we've known Eliott for a long time. He's been a friend of the Institute and a friend of the magazine. One of the things I'd like to talk about today is the stimulus.
Sure.
and how electric utilities are dealing with that, how they can benefit, what the challenges are. I'll just drop it out like that.
Sure. Let me maybe try to give some shape and perspective, and then we can take it from there.
That's great.
There's, of course, a number of different categories of stimulus bill funding. There's smart grid, there's energy efficiency, there's renewables, and then there's the different categories or types of funding, right? There are grants and there are loan guarantees. So the grants are the programs that people are focusing on more right at the outset. The loan guarantee program is still largely under development. We're kind of waiting to see what's going to come out of DOE. There was a loan guarantee under the Energy Policy Act, but there's going to be a new iteration of it now, of course, under the stimulus bill and under the Obama administration. Different criteria. The old program was focused more on advanced technologies. This one's supposed to be focused on sort of new or commercially available technologies and a lot of other differences. But we're kind of waiting to see what's going to happen and what shoes are going to drop with regard to the loan guarantees. On the grant programs, some of the money is beginning to flow and is already available or will be soon available to states under grant programs that are set by formula. So there are specific numeric formula that determine how much different state agencies will get for energy conservation programs, for example.
Right.
The one that is still a bit of a conundrum that people are waiting on was one that was announced for last week that was supposed to be, specific guidance was supposed to be provided then, and that's for the smart grid. And DOE had been saying in various documents that June 17th, last Wednesday, was the date by which that money was going to be available. I'm sorry, not the money was going to be available, but the criteria for dispersing that money was going to be announced, whereafter applications would be provided. So, a number of utilities are now trying to figure out what the programs they have that would be applicable under that, and what mix of those programs, which ones are they going to apply for, what are the criteria they're going to use internally. We've been helping some utilities, EEI members, in thinking through that process. But it is a bit of a muddle, right now.
There are positives and negatives about taking the grant money. Is that right?
Well, that's true as well. There absolutely are both potential benefits and risks.
Yes.
One of the benefits, of course, is that with whatever money they get, they'll be able to facilitate or be a catalyst for new programs. They'll be able to lower consumer costs, and hopefully then to have an economic benefit, an economic stimulus. And some of the risks, however, and what we're hearing is that there is two risks I'll point out. One is the application process is is non-trivial. There's a lot of different elements, to say the least, and a cost to putting those applications together, because a lot of bases got to be covered. We could talk about those. But also there's a lot of strings attached. If DOE gives you money, they're going to want very specific reporting on what the effects were of the funds that they gave you.
Right.
They want to be able to show how much energy was saved, how much CO2 was reduced, how many jobs were created, economic impact. There's a whole lot of different elements that they're going to, and you have to set up a reporting network, and a framework in advance to be able to track all of those things.
Is that something that DOE has provided criteria for in terms of? I mean, that's an ROI, right? You said, we've invested this. What do we get back, right?
Right, but it's not just the return on investment. It's some of these. It's quantitative aspects to it, like what are the returns, how many kilowatt hours were saved.
Right.
But there's also more of these public policy elements to it,
Yes,
like how many jobs were created, or what climate benefit or CO2 was reduced. So there's a number of different elements that the utilities are concerned about having to provide and to set up that framework to do. And also the projects that they have. If there's a transmission project that they have that's underway, the timing of the funds has to match up with the timing of the project. And so it may be that when they're looking for the funds, it might not be an exact match with when DOE is allocating the money. There's probably not going to be enough money for all of the people that apply for it. I mean, it sounds like a lot of money, but when you start divvying it up into these different criteria, you know, $5 billion here, I mean, $1 billion used to be a lot of money.
Right. As I said today, yes.
Right, exactly. But when you start looking at what the infrastructure investment needs are in the utility industry, in transmission, or the opportunities in renewables and in a number of other areas, it really, there won't be enough money for everybody. So probably the first wave of applications is going to get a premium in terms of people applying for that.
Yes.
And trying to get what money is available, because they don't know if money is going to be available in the second and third rounds.
Right, right.
And that may or may not match up well with the actual projects that utilities are looking to put in place. So it's phasing, especially if you're a multi-state utility. You know, you want to look across the spectrum. You may have smart grid projects, for example, in several different states. Right. Some of them they may fit with, and some of them they may not. And that actually brings up the whole element of the state regulatory framework also, the state regulators. You know,
it's exactly what kind of differences could happen between between one state and another, right?
Right.
Is that what you're talking about? Just we look at these criteria one way, I look at the criteria a different way.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. Consumers Energy, in one of the decisions from the Michigan Public Service Commission, got a ruling that indicated that that they would allow consumers to spend money for smart grid investments for 2008 and 2009, but those were more of a pilot type of program. What they said was they would defer or wait to determine whether or not consumers would get more funds from the state or be allowed to collect from their customers until they found out, until the utility found out whether they would get a grant from the DOE. Mm-hmm. So there's a contingency, obviously, that they are expecting, and in fact requiring, really, the utility to apply for those funds, and they're saying, we're not going to give you another nickel for this until we see whether or not you get that. So there's, there's a little bit, there's a state regulatory element that's involved. Duke Energy is obviously in a number of different states. In one state, I think in Ohio, they've gotten approval for smart grid programs, and others, they may not have gotten that approval. So trying to phase that and get the timing right, as well as meet the DOE criteria and the other things I mentioned, is again, not a trivial exercise.